Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group. And tonight we have on our political show, we have the 4th District at-large candidate, Mr. Justin Short. How are you doing tonight, Justin?
Well, I am fantastic. You know, a lot of people aren't going to see the conversation we had before this, but I'm just elated by it.
Yeah, well, you know, most of my guests and my audience know we talk off camera, and then sometimes we bring it on camera. Without further ado, let's go to tell our audience a little bit about yourself, and let's go to kindergarten. You know the drill, man. And hey, Justin, and make sure you give the props to individuals that helped you grow in your life so that they know how much you really appreciate what they have contributed to you.
Well, I think, you know, starting with that would be my parents. My dad, Michael Short, and my mom, Jennifer Short. My dad was a Platte County commissioner for a long time and on the Park Hill School Board. And my mom was really involved philanthropically. So they instilled in me a lot of wonderful lessons. And when you think about the parent jackpot, you know, the parent lottery, I did hit the jackpot with my parents. They are the finest people that I've ever known. And I'm a very lucky man, but born and raised in the Northland. I have a twin sister and a little sister. I went to Park Hill South High School. I was an Eagle Scout from Platte Woods United Methodist, where I still attend. And then went off to the University of Missouri, and I got a degree in business and hospitality management and a minor in communication. And now I am, then I went and worked on a cruise ship for 7 years. I was a cruise director of entertainment. And that was a really wonderful experience. And then came home to Kansas City, and I had always had political aspirations, specifically being city council, because my passion has always been for the city. It never was with the state or with the county. It was always with the city specifically. So I just didn't realize it was going to be kind of this quick, you know, through a forced reorganization of my life in March of 2020. Things just kept falling into place for this. And so I had always thought that my timeline for this was going to be much later, but you know, they say that things work out the way that they're supposed to. And I'm super excited about where we're at. So I think that kind of leads me to today, but I think it's important, you know, none of that happened without my parents, my family, and teachers. And I, you know, one of the things that I always like to talk about is the teachers that have had a profound impact on me. I mean, there are some great ones out there. Deanna Kelliker, Aaron, I almost said Aaron Brokoff. I almost said Aaron Brockovich. I meant to say Elizabeth Brokoff, and Debbie Rose. I mean, those people really changed the trajectory of my life, and they instilled a lot of a lot of the things that I am using in practice as an adult today. So I think when it comes to my parents and my family and my teachers, I really lucked out.
All right. So what is your platform that you would like to introduce that makes you think that you're so special to get that seat in the 4th district, baby boy?
Well, I love that question. You know, it kind of, there's a couple different answers. You know, the two overarching themes of our campaign are 1, collaborative effort, and 2, graceful dissension, which is the ability to agree to disagree respectfully, which I think both of which right now our council struggles to do. And being able to have really tough conversations and not shut people out, and do things that are more oftentimes difficult than they are easy. You know, I think it's important. I think that for me, I don't plan on having a second job. So, you know, my 4th even though it's technically a part-time job, we all know that it's not, especially an at-large seat. And so I don't plan on having a second job, and you know, I want to be able to give my entire focus to the 4th district and the 4th district at large, because that, of course, the at-large seat represents the entire city, and it is a full-time job, and we have to be committing ourselves to community through community-driven leadership. And I look forward to bringing back 4th district meetings, and I look forward to engaging with our community in ways that aren't being done right now. So I'm excited about that, and I think that there are. I think when you're talking about specific policy that I would like to bring, there's some development initiatives we've got. I want to see some zoning changes made that are going to make development a little bit easier, that have been.
You want to be specific about any of the development changes?
Yeah.
All right.
So I think we have to look at the zoning code. The zoning, as we all know, and anybody who's done a little bit of research on the zoning code is pretty deep set into some systemic racist issues, which cause a lot of the de-investment problems that we have in our city right now. And so things like parking minimums and things like lot size minimums and things like that. There's also, I would like to see those changed. There's also this thing called missing middle housing. So it's the space between single family home and multifamily home. And it's essentially accessory dwelling units, ADUs. So what do we define as a dwelling unit, and how do we define it? And really changing these things can really help with some of the affordability conversations that we're having. If I have, let's say, I'll give you a specific example so it's easier to put, into context. But if I have a home, let's say in Brookside, and I have a detached garage that's got a really great attic space, well, I cannot right now convert that attic space into a studio apartment for someone that I can rent for $500 or $600 a month. I am not allowed to do that legally. So changing the zoning code to allow for those types of developments, and then changing lot size minimums to allow for infill development, which is to say in an area that we can put 10 houses, let's say that we can put 18, the way that neighborhoods were kind of built in the past. So to kind of get back into that business, because something that you and I talked about earlier was, the social issues or the social service stuff that we are hearing all the time, and the things that people are wanting us to do, we can't do without further revenue. And the way we're going to get there for further revenue is infill and further tax increases. So that's kind of like some development stuff we're looking at. I think that some of our developers are frustrated with the planning and development process, which I think it's clear to see that it's quite difficult to get projects done in Kansas City, especially when you can hop the state line and do it relatively easily. So I would like to work with the city manager to take a look at that and see how we can streamline the process. But Kansas City needs to keep growing, and Kansas City needs to keep building. We've had some wonderful announcements coming about some really great projects that are coming up. We have to have a council who's ready to meet the demand and rise to the occasion of the things that are coming to Kansas City based on Kansas City's inherent attraction. So that's kind of like a 50,000 foot overview, of the. Well, that's
I'll get kind of version. Specific a little bit because downtown is primarily your district. How do you feel about the development that is taking place as it relates to the housing stock and what they're doing as it relates to that, the high rise? Do you think that we actually can fill these buildings?
Well, my job right now, I'm the assistant property manager at 909 Walnut for Worcester Investments. So we own the 36-story apartment building, we own the parking garage with the event space, and we own the 10-story office space that's attached. So that job gives me access to a lot of data that isn't readily available to, like you couldn't just call somebody and get this information. But a lot of these high rises, I'll mention 1 light, 2 light respectively, they're at 97% occupancy. They're at 96% occupancy. There was one time in 2021 when both buildings were almost at 99%. So the idea, and downtown occupancy on the whole never dropped below 96%. So the people that say that we're building these buildings and we don't need them, well, that just isn't true. And, Three Light hasn't even finished their parking deck and they're already 20% pre-leased. So while I think that luxury housing is great and we need that, but we also must be doing market rate and attainable housing. I don't like to use the term affordable housing because there's specifics tied to that. And I believe we need to work on what the specifics are. I think we've missed the mark on that. So I'd like to see us change that. So that's why I use the term attainable housing, because I think we can do better. So while there is a need for the affordable piece, there's also a need for the luxury piece. I do think we can do both. In the development community, we hear a lot about walking and chewing gum at the same time. We have the ability to do both. To kill one,
you might have the ability to do both, but it seems like in the past, some of your predecessors couldn't chew bubble gum and go in the right direction.
I think, though, I think that there is some reasoning for that. I mean, I think we had to develop the downtown area to a certain level to support a population base. Back in 2003, 2002, when all this was starting, there was 1,300 people living inside, the loop. And now we're hitting 25,000. I mean, we are at a number that now can support mixed income developments. And so that's what I'm looking forward to in the next, and there's some great sites. We've been having conversations, because I'm on the Downtown Neighborhood Association as well. We've been having some conversations about some mixed use, mixed income. I know that's kind of a double, mixed use, mixed income developments that are pretty exciting. And if they move forward, it's going to be a big announcement, and we'll be able to move forward with more housing options for people, specifically downtown.
All right, because you on the Black Network.
Yeah.
What do you see for the 3rd and 5th district? Because you're at large. Talk about some of the things that you see, and talk to my community in specific.
One of the things that I'm really excited about is the 18th and Vine development. I know that Mr. Kelvin has done a lot of work on that development, and it's quite frankly, it's time. You have these amazing venues at 18th and Vine, i.e. the Jazz Museum and the Negro Baseball Leagues Museum, which is Bob Kendrick's a friend of mine, and I fiercely love that organization. But that's it. And now there are people that tell you that there's some other things, and there is great things. There's great restaurants and all of that. I'm not saying that it's not, but you have buildings around it that are literally crumbling. So at what point do we say, okay, let's do this development, let's do this infill that needs to be done, and then see what comes of it. This 18th and Vine development is what we like to call a catalytic development. So its initial development is going to have an ROI that's going to affect the entire area. And I'm really looking forward to what that means for 18th and Vine. And, there were people that said, well, I don't want it to be another Beale Street or another Bourbon Street. And I think while those concerns are valid, making it a destination is what it should be, because 18th and Vine, a lot of people, it goes over their head or they miss that 18th and Vine is baseball in Kansas City. It's not at Truman Sports. That is where the stadium was. And a lot of people don't, or miss, or goes over their head. 18th and Vine is where jazz came from, and spiraled out into the nation. And so to have experiential places like that surrounded by a walkable, connectable community I think it is important. And I think that we will see that.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's get out there to the 5th district. What you telling the people out there?
I think that one of the most exciting things I'm seeing from the 5th district is the, the expansion of the streetcar east to west. So we all know that it's going out to UMKC. We all know that it's likely going up north. We all know that it's going to Berkeley. But right now, I'm so sorry, excuse me. Right now they're studying taking that streetcar east to west. And most of the east to west connections are going through the 5th district at some point. And I think that people don't have a full understanding of the amount of impact that that would have on a district in terms of people moving, in terms of investment. I mean, we are able to identify almost $4 billion of investment that's been done on the current streetcar spine. And so imagine if something like that is now hitting the 5th district. I mean, this is all has revenue potential for the city that could really help the areas that do need it the most, which I think you and I have identified as the 3rd and the 5th district. So that is something, as far as 5th district specific projects, that is something that I'm looking for.
I know that Emmett Pearson is doing some development with Swope Park. I just rode past that, was really surprised, and some other things out there that are taking place. So is there any other things that you'd like to touch on to really inform our community of, like, a little more about you and what your plans are?
It's like I said earlier, my plans for this city are to continue its growth. And I feel like, the pandemic didn't help anything, but I do feel like we're at a stage right now where we're stagnant, and we have to have a council who has progressive ideas, who's ready, and not progressive in the sense of the national political conversation, just progressive in the way that we think outside the box about things. Just because we've gone from A to B one way all of our lives doesn't mean we need to do it that way. There are many other ways to get there. So I think looking a little bit more progressively at things can really help us in the future. And so I'm excited about the people that are running. I'm excited about the council that we could potentially have, especially with some of our returning at-large seats in Kevin O'Neill and Andrea Boo. And so it's encouraging to see what those two will bring in their next phase of council, should they win their elections, of course. But I think it's reasonable to assume that they will. And again, the collaborative effort and the graceful dissension
that was my next question to you.
Yeah.
Hey man, don't be doing no mind reading on me. I was going to ask you, how well do you think that you can build coalitions? Because politics is all about coalitions.
It is. It absolutely is. I was at a screening the other day for one of our amazing labor unions, and somebody asked me, what's your plan to fix the houseless problem in our city? What are you going to do? And I said, I am not going to do anything. I said, we can do something. I said, if anybody sits in this chair and says that they are the sole savior of anything, they're not paying attention, or they're being disingenuous, because all of these things take, like you said, coalitions, collaborations. Anybody that's announced that they're running for an at-large seat anywhere in this city, I have met with, because it is very important to know what's important to people, to have relationships to people, to have that sort of relationship building, to be able to do the things that we want to do later on. I think a lot of our council comes in as strangers, and I think that's a disservice to the city. But that goes beyond city council. Let's say we have a couple of major infrastructure projects in the next decade, which we do. Well, the city's not going to pay for it alone. What does the city need? State money. How do we get state money? You have to have relationships with state lawmakers and state legislators and state representatives and state stakeholders. And so it goes beyond just the city council. So I've met with state reps and gotten their feedback and gotten their information. It's also important to meet with the county folks and the incoming county folks, because just because we can't afford it alone as the city, well, maybe the county can help. So there is so much to that. to your point, it is about coalitions. It is about collaborations. It is about, I've always been very good at kind of assimilating into different groups and leading from a place of empathy rather than defensiveness. You know, why somebody might believe the way that they do. Just because I don't agree with them doesn't mean I can't be nice, you know? And that really goes a long way. And people respond to that. I mean, I've had conversations with people who I fervently disagree with, but I'm still
I'm at a loss for words. You used the word to describe that when you first came on, you know, disagreeing, but moving forward.
Oh, graceful dissension.
Right. Get me together. Help me out. Came out of New York City school system, shop, gym. Lexicon very limited. But you got to text me that, because I think that is a major problem in politics, and then it has trickled down to our everyday life.
Of course it is. You know, one of the councilmen that endorsed our campaign, one of the things that he said to me was, and actually, the first person to endorse our campaign, former Mayor Kay Barnes, they both kind of mirrored the same sentiments. They said, you absolutely, when you get there, you have to make sure that you are agreeing to disagree respectfully. Now, of course, I changed that a little bit into my own kind of word base, but I think that we've lost that. You know, this particular former council person told me we used to debate things heated on the floor, and then get in the elevator and we would go out to dinner and ask everybody about their grandkids, their pets, and all this
stuff. And how old were those people that you were talking about?
Well, I mean, you know, it's probably
because that's how it was done. And I told you I'm 70. That's how it was done 40 years ago. I hate your guts in council, but hey, let's go get the steak, man. Are you driving or I'm driving? Well,
because at the end of the day, everybody has got to eat. Everybody's got to drink. Now, if you don't drink alcohol, that's of course up to you. But, you know, I think, and everybody has a family, and everybody has common threads. And if we can't even relate in any of those, then we're doing our city a great disservice, because you just have to. And the infighting and the bickering and you did this, so I'm going to do that and all of that, it's got to end, because we have to have a council who's ready to rise to the challenge that we are about to be faced with.
All right. In closing, what would you want to say to our public?
Kansas City is a magical place, and I believe that. I have always said one of the best sentences on the planet is it when you're on an airplane and the pilot says, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kansas City." Kansas City is my home. Kansas City is the place that grew me. It broke me. It built me back up. This place is home. It's my life. And to be able to serve this city and its people in the way that it deserves to be represented by is something that I take very seriously. And it's an oath and a journey that I will take seriously, and it will be my priority.
All right. That was a mouthful for me. Because, and when I say it was a mouthful for me, looking at the visual, it was like it was heartfelt. Put me in a damn trance, your little closing.
I mean it, Carlos.
I know you meant it. Yeah, shit, I just said that it had me in a trance when you said the airline, because I'm from New York, right?
Yeah.
And when I go home, and I haven't been home in about 15 years, people be like, "This is Carlos from they be introducing me from Kansas City." And I'm like, "Hey man, get yourself together. I'm from New York. I reside in Kansas City." But when you just said that, I was like, when I do fly and what have you, I'd be happy when they Kansas City, here I come. And that's why I'm dribbling over that, because you really sent me into cloud nine with that, because coming to Kansas City in 78, a Nicola Park, they was putting boots on your car in New York, and housing and livable city and all of that was enwrapped in you saying when the wheels go down and Kansas City. You described that to the 10th degree. So,
well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
with that being said, it was a plum pleasing pleasure. That's Mr. Jim Watts's line, but I steal it all the time. That when he's on the show, he'd be like, "It's a plum pleasing pleasure to have you on the show." But as we always close, when you invest in your community, you're really go ahead.
Invest.
Who they
You're really just investing in yourself. I love it.
All right.
I love it. I love it.
The program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.